All right, I think I'm live. So, Dr. Karen here, and today I am talking a little bit about the mid-year slump for SLPs. So, as I'm recording this, it's almost the end of January, which is crazy because I feel like we just started January. And yeah, this January is not like other Januaries because we've just come off a ridiculous year. We'll just say that 2020 was something, and I think a lot of us feel like it's still extending into this month. But I wanted to share a couple things with you that I've been working through personally, some things that I noticed when I was an SLP working in the school systems that seemed to be kind of a pattern in January or February, and also that I've noticed in some of the groups of SLPs that I am in, as well as among my readers. And the first thing, obviously, is that if you feel like you're kind of in a slump, if you're feeling tired, exhausted, burnt out, all the things, um, it's not just you. This is something that is a pattern any year, but obviously this year is probably more significant than ever. So I wanted to share some things that I'm doing, share a resource that I have, something that I always share with people, and yeah, just talk through it so that you have some tools, and hopefully my experience can help you with your experience. So first of all, there is, if you notice that you have certain times of the year that are harder than others, then there's a scientific reason for that. And if you've noticed certain patterns, if you sometimes feel like you're super motivated and you get things done, and other times it just feels like you're pulling teeth, again, it's not just you. That is something that there's a reason for that. And I've actually been spending, because I've been in, I would say, feeling a little bit tired and burnt out recently. I've been spending my time really just regrouping and researching and just kind of taking a step back to process, and have been revisiting some information that I've read in previous times when I was in my productive phases. So, something that I've been reading the last 2 days is this book, When by Dan Pink, and he talks a little bit about just the cycles that we go through in our day to day lives, and then also just when we have some kind of a big product or project where we have certain times where we in peak performance, and other times where we go through what he calls kind of a slump or a trough, and there's kind of this up and down. And what happens is that a lot of times, if we are forcing ourselves to do certain things during our trough, which is our time where we're less productive, less focused, a little bit more fatigued, then our performance goes down, and it's harder to get ourselves motivated to do things during that time. And so then that can cause just overall fatigue. So I don't, again, I highly recommend the book. I'm going to hit some high points and talk about how I've noticed some relevance to my experiences as an SLP. And but obviously I recommend reading the book if you haven't. So first of all, one of the things that he talks about is just that during your day, that there are typically times when you are, again, peak performing. You have a time where you're kind of tired, and then you kind of come back. So depending on what kind of person you are, there are different, he calls them larks, so those would be your morning people, people who are kind of in the middle, and then there are the owls, who are the night owls. And most people fall kind of in the middle there, but then there are people on the extremes, the outliers. So obviously, if you're an SLP, you are probably working in an environment that encourages you to either be a lark or kind of in the middle. If you are an owl and you like to be a night owl, so let's say that if you have a day off and you naturally find that you like to stay up later and get up earlier, obviously the environment that you're in is not exactly aligned with your tendencies. So that's something to keep in mind when you're, again, picking when you see clients and things like that, or the way that you manage your schedule. But throughout the day, because a lot of us tend to be kind of in that mid-range, a lot of times what happens is that there is this time in the morning when that is our peak performance time, when we are our sharpest, when we are peak performing, and then we've got kind of the middle of the day, and then usually in the afternoon for a lot of people, and this depends on where you fall and what kind of person you are, but a lot of times 2-3 o'clock, that late afternoon time, is when we really start to fatigue. So a lot of times people will get a little bit of a dip there. That's a good time to kind of take a break, do things that are less taxing, and then come back in the afternoon or evening. There's a lot of times a little bit more of a peak in the afternoon. And again, he describes it in more detail in the book. But the important thing is that some people, like if you have a private practice, you might be able to plan around all of these things. But if you don't, and you're working in a school, for example, you may or may not have that total control over your schedule, but just being aware of this can give you some insight. And this is why a lot of times schools will take this into account. We know that younger kids tend to be more morning people, and then they start to be more, in the teenage years, tend to be night owls, and then it kind of comes back later on. And that again depends on your natural tendency as well. So a lot of schools are starting to fall in line with putting a lot of the academic subjects in the morning as well. So if you're someone who's planning your therapy or your day, and you are one of those people that tends to be more productive in the morning, then that's something that you can do, kind of do your really most challenging things first thing, and don't wait to the afternoon if you can control it at all. If you have some control over that, don't do your most taxing things in that afternoon if you do feel like you get in kind of a trough. So that is one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is that you might sometimes, maybe your time that you have to write your reports is in the afternoon, and that's just when you have to do it. So there are a couple things you can do to work around it. You could try to do it in the morning, or there are ways that you can work through your trough a little bit more effectively. Just even scheduling in some walk breaks or socialization breaks, which the socialization breaks, I know a lot of times when I worked in the school, there would be times when people would just kind of be hanging out in the office chatting instead of doing work, but for them it was probably something that they could do to recharge. Now, the reason that that's really hard now, and why a lot of people are feeling kind of fatigued, is that a lot of those activities because what happens is that when you're in that slump or that trough, a lot of times what can kind of get you through it is just to take a break, to recharge, and then come back. And a lot of times just the act of taking a break can kind of break that cycle and get you into a state where you are able to perform better again. But the problem with that is that now we have to do things all online. We don't have those social breaks. We're isolated. So if you're somebody who really needs those types of things and benefits from those types of breaks, it's been harder this year. So obviously it's normal to be feeling kind of fatigued right now. And I think a lot of kids are feeling this way as well, because when they're having to log on for their class, yeah, they're getting their instruction delivered, but they're not getting that socialization time. They're not getting that, 5 minutes between classes where they get to walk around, or maybe even just like have some free time to talk to their friends for just a couple minutes. So, and again, sometimes that happens if you're a therapist working in a facility where there's just other people, where you can maybe just even have small talk for just, momentarily when you're going from one student to another, or when you're in between sessions and you just get up and walk to go get your next group of kids or something like that. And if you're just sitting at a computer all day, you're not getting that. So if you're feeling more fatigued than normal, it's important to know that. One of the things that Dan Pink recommends is that, number one, if you notice that you're in a trough, scheduling in some of that quick break time, even if it's just a 5 to 10 minute thing, and also just taking a 5-minute break, mental break, every hour. So this could even be like going to the, getting up, going to get a drink, doing whatever you need to do, especially if you are in a situation where you're doing a lot of remote learning and things like that. And then the one thing that's really important that we've actually had to talk to my stepdaughter about is that, okay, when you get a break from class and you want to recharge, that's fine, but do something that actually recharges you, meaning tech-free. So actually doing things, what a lot of people will do is that they'll play on their phone during their breaks, but that actually makes you more tired. It doesn't actually give you what you need. It's kind of like eating junk food where it feels good in the moment, and once you start doing it, it's kind of addictive, but then afterwards it doesn't actually make you feel better. So getting up and moving, getting up and talking to someone, whatever it is, if it's like a quick, like I like to just go pet my dog for 5 minutes or something like that, but getting off your device as much as possible and scheduling those things in can make a big difference. So that's throughout the day. And again, like I said, if you are in a situation where you only have so much control over your schedule, at least just being aware of how you put things and how you block things out, and know that you might want to be more mindful of scheduling those breaks to kind of get you through the trough if you do have any flexibility there, or if you do have to do certain things at certain times, just being aware of when you might be needing those breaks, and those, and importantly, tech-free breaks. So even if it's reading a book or something like that, just something that doesn't involve staring at a screen. I know for me, something that I've been doing is that I have been doing a lot of those adult coloring books. That's been really, really therapeutic for me, because it's something that does not involve being around people. So if we're social distancing, it's something that's safe, but also something that gets me away from looking at a screen. Now, the other thing is that, so there's a trough within the day, but then there's also a slump within big projects or initiatives. So again, the school year, if you are someone who works in a school, is kind of like that as well. And what happens with some people is that you start off strong, and then the middle is kind of a slump, and then you get back up to speed at the end. And that happens for a lot of different things. And when and again, Dan Pink in his book talks about how when teams work together, regardless of what the goal is, that tends to be a pattern that they see, where there's a beginning period, and they may or may not be getting anything done, and then the middle, either it's the pattern is start strong, slump, and then go back up at the end, or it's kind of like flat, and then at the mid period is when things start to build again, because you realize you're getting closer to your goal. But either way, that midpoint can be very challenging. So if you think about it, during the school year, this period, we have these little breaks that kind of break up our school year and give us that burst of energy. Like for me, when I was working in the school year, I had these emotional peaks and valleys where it was like, start the year strong. Oh, okay, October, feeling like starting to get into a slump, but then we've got Thanksgiving, and what else? Columbus Day that happens in October that kind of gets us through. So there's these little things where you can kind of schedule these breaks for these little, short time off that gets you through it. And then it's like, all right, Thanksgiving, and then we've got the holidays. And then you go back in January, and I'm in the Midwest, so it's cold, and you can't go outside as much. And my office didn't have any windows when I was working in the schools. So I never had any vitamin D coming in, and I never got to see the outside when I was actually in therapy sessions. So that was really, January and February were really hard for me when I was working in the schools. And it's hard now because I can't go anywhere. I mean, you can't, yeah, you can, I do get outside and run every day, but we're not necessarily going out in public and able to do things like we normally are in a normal year. So, and then I think there is some seasonal depression there. So you've got that big stretch between when you go back to school after the holidays and spring break. And that's kind of the longest stretch that there is. And the weather isn't as nice and things like that. So for a lot of people, even though it's the beginning of the new year, if you work in a school, it doesn't feel like the beginning of the year because you're not in your head on, you're not in the January to December year. You're more in the August to May, June type of year. So if you're feeling a slump now, it's a couple of reasons. It's just, this year is crazy. And then also it's, could be some seasonal type things where you're not outside as much and you're not able to get outdoors. That's one of the other things that is recommended for getting through your trough. But then also just that it's that midpoint, and it is normal to have that slump during that time. So I guess the moral of the story is that if you're feeling kind of like you're fatigued right now, you're normal. And a lot of people feel that way right now. And I think it's just a matter of being even more mindful of, number one, allowing yourself to get through it and just, not feeling bad about it, not feeling like there's something wrong with you. If you want to go easy on yourself and give yourself some grace, if you're not feeling super motivated right now, even though it's January and New Year's resolutions and all that stuff. And also just being more aware of the times that you actually can do something to lift your mood, lift your spirits, and get away from your screen for a time. Or just if you are doing something that does involve a device like professional development, reading, watching, even if it's watching a movie, yes, that's on a device, but it's something that's taking a break. Like if you are going to do something that involves taking a break, then just allowing yourself to give yourself time for that self-care. So yeah, that was a lot of my own personal brain dump as well. So the good news is that it's almost February. We almost made it through January, so good job, everybody. I do have, as usual, I still have all my resources available that I normally do. So if you're feeling like you are kind of getting through, like you've allowed yourself to rest and you're ready to go again, and you do want to get back into some professional development, or if you want just a change of pace from therapy and you want to spend some time reflecting and thinking about how you do your therapy instead of just being, focused on your sessions and planning and the day-to-day, obviously I still have all of my resources available for you whenever you want to take advantage of them. So for example, one of the things that I always have is my blog with all of my articles there. And I just recently revamped one of my online presentations, and I noticed that a lot of people do in February, once they've kind of gotten through that slump of January, do like to start getting into that again. They kind of start to have that upswing after the slump of January and all of the craziness of the holidays, and want to start getting back into thinking about professional development again. So I actually have a revamped webinar of my language therapy framework for those of you who are ready to start thinking about that and want to start reevaluating their language therapy. So I will share some links to that in the comments below this video, but again, as I said, just keep hanging in there, everybody, and my resources will be here for you when you're ready. And let me know what questions you have, what things you're working through. I'll share some of my links below this video. So I'm always posting new things on the blog, and I do have that brand new presentation for you when you're ready to start. When you've rested and recharged and you're ready to start getting back into it. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching, and have a great day.